I bring my mess to you as I find myself face down in the pit. The weight of sin clouds my view, caused by no one else or no one. All my hurt and pain has stripped all my joy and darkened my days. I stand before you a broken man, in desperate need of your touch. Whoa. Wash me clean in your river, baptize me in your grace. Rise once again in my spirit, so that I may see the glory of your face. I bring my mess to you, 'cause I can't seem to carry it anymore. I find no rest, but when I do, my mind spins on how I disappoint. Oh, my pride, I should have known before I let it carry on that far. I stand alone on my mountaintop, separated from you. Oh, Jesus, build me a bridge so that I may cross into the glory of your space, where I can see all that you see, making glory from my disgrace, making glory through grace. Wash me clean in your river, baptize me in your grace. Rise once again in my spirit, so that I may see the glory of your face, so that I may see the glory of your face, making glory from my disgrace, making glory through grace.
Good evening, Facebook. How are we doing? I pray everybody's had a really good day. It's been a little interesting here, I guess. I decided to stay up and watch this election stuff yesterday and went to bed about 2 o'clock this morning, so I'm a little groggy today, but caught me a small nap. My hair, I still got bed heads and stuff going, but it'll be all right. So I hope everybody else has had a good day. I will say, no matter who you voted for in the election, at the end of the day, we all know who's in control. So if it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out, whoever it is does not have the final say. It's all about Jesus. Jesus is the king maker. He's the king taker. He'll take care of it. So don't stress out about what happened in the last 24 hours. I just intrigued by it, so I had to watch. I want to thank you to the thread. Just another episode. We're going to look at a different parable today. We're running out of parables, believe it or not. I think we got like 5 left. Might get us through till Christmas. This one is the parable of the weeds. It's found in Matthew 13. And I titled this one, The Promise and Peril of Weeds, which I think is kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. It's in Matthew 13. We're going to read verses 24 through 30. So bear with me here. Let's go through this real quick. And Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. And when the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your fields? Where then did these weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. And the servants asked, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling up the weeds, you might uproot some of the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them into bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." So as you see here, it's a pretty straightforward parable. But just like all these other parables, there are so many things that we can take from it. I found 3 lessons from this just by looking at it for a brief time today. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the 3 lessons from this parable and see where God takes from there. The first lesson that you can learn is God is going to make a distinction in the future. Think about that for a minute. God is going to make a distinction in the future. At some point in my journey as a believer, when I was a baby Christian, I began to wonder something, and I bet you some of you have wondered the same thing. Why doesn't God inflict immediate justice on those who are evil, on those who hurt the ones we love, of those who hurt others, on those who are just flat out evil in our eyes? Why doesn't God just take care of it immediately? Because it seemed to me that the unrighteous, the people that were doing things the wrong way, were prospering more than the people that were supposedly God's chosen people. I did not get it. Well, if you think about the parable of the weeds, speaks to this issue a little bit. And it talks about God's long-term strategy of dealing with that kind of people. This is what brings us to the first lesson we're talking about here, which is that God will make a distinction in the future. He told them to uproot the weeds at harvest time, which means the weeds will be uprooted at harvest time. In this parable, he told his servants, and I'll read it again in Matthew 13:30. "Let both grow together until the harvest. And then at that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them into bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat and bring it into the barn." Jesus said at the time of the harvest, the weeds will be collected and burned. He wasn't going to bother uprooting the weeds at some random or arbitrary time. Instead, he was going to wait till the harvest, when the wheat was going to be ready to be collected, and then he would uproot the weeds first. It appears that waiting for the harvest has more to do with the protection of the wheat than it has anything to do with the weeds. In fact, the servants asked the owner if they should go ahead and pull the weeds up when they first saw them, and he said no. Why do you think he said that? Some of you farmers probably know, but that's beside the point. I found this intriguing. He's continued by saying, because while you're pulling these weeds up, you may uproot some of the wheat with it. When everything was ripe, it was just going to be easier to make a distinction between what was weeds and what was wheat. Likewise, in proper time, those who are in the kingdom and those who are not will become apparent. It should be noted, if you think about this really, that none of us were saved at birth. We all started out as weeds. Imagine, if you will, the first time we looked like weeds, and if the first time we looked like weeds, we were uprooted. Some of us in our own walk sometimes look like weeds. What if we got uprooted because we looked like weeds, even though we're trying to walk in Christ? That would mean destroying those of us who were destined to be wheat. If he went ahead and pulled us up now, if he went ahead and pulled the wheat in the parable, he would pull up by default some of the actual wheat that was good to harvest. In our own walk, he might pull us up because he'll be hard sometimes to determine whether they're wheat or weeds just by the way we are sometimes. So I would advise you, be patient with people that look like weeds. Because it may not seem like God's doing anything about unbelievers. It really doesn't. Sometimes like they're winning a race. Now, I want you to remember, we were once there too. And just as God was patient with us, we should be patient also. I'm going to end this section here with something 2 Peter 3:9. Peter, pretty sharp guy. He was an old foul-mouthed fisherman, so I like him. But he said something here. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promises. Some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but for everyone to come to repentance. Perhaps he's patient with those people that look like weeds because he's hoping that they come to repentance. Perhaps. Let's go to the second lesson. We've all heard this. This is an old grandma one. You reap what you sow. See, Jesus was around when farming was a major part of daily life. I know in Iowa, farming is a major part of daily life. But when you get outside of this area, outside of the breadbasket, farming is foreign to some of us as Greek. And I'm sorry, I'm one of those people. It's not surprising that a lot of the parables in Matthew reference farming or sowing. Because just before this, he shares the parable of the sower. And he also shared the parable of the mustard seed. So in each of these parables, when a seed is sown, something grew. And this highlights a law that brings us to what I want to talk about. We reap what we sow. See, both the weed and the wheat were sowed in this parable. And the weed's growth and the wheat came from something. But where the result of action was taken prior to. Otherwise, the farmer planted the seed for the wheat. But remember, an enemy came in and planted the weeds. There was still a cause. So remember the start of the parable, it said this, from the kingdom from heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. See, most people could easily accept that the wheat came about because the sower planted them. Weeds, on the other hand, seem to grow out of nowhere. They just pop up. They even popped up in my wife's tomato plants. Okay, so I don't know. There wasn't anything growing there until we planted the tomatoes. In reality, just like there are seeds for desirable plants such as wheat, there are seeds for weeds as well. If anything bad appears in our lives, this is the lesson I want you to take for this. If anything bad appears in our life, has been sown by someone or something. In this parable, the weeds, this parable, the owner's enemy who represented the evil one sowed weeds. Similarly, other people knowingly and unknowingly could be the reason behind some of your bad outcomes. Sometimes it may be us that sow those seeds. Sometimes we are masters of our own destruction, my friends. And we do it and we don't even realize we're doing it. But never expect to reap something that you didn't sow. Because it's impossible for something to grow that has not been planted. So we shouldn't expect to get something or anything from nothing. This is why the servants in the parable of the weeds were shocked to see weeds among the wheat. That's why they questioned the sower. Sir, did you grow good seed? Did you sow good seed in your field, Lord? Because where these weeds come from? My friends, if you sow good seed, if you take care of your garden yourself, and you sow good seed, guess what happens? Good things come from it. If we let stuff that doesn't need to be in here, and I'm just as guilty as you, if we let stuff in here that does not need to be here, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get what we put into ourselves. Garbage in, garbage out. God in, God out. Figure it out. It's not rocket science, my friends. When I put plenty of Bible and prayer and meditation into my spirit, guess what comes out? Good. When I check all the negativity of the news and all the foul language on TV and all the messed up stuff and some of the music that we listen to, guess what comes out? That. So if you keep spewing weeds, perhaps you should check what's being sown. The third and the final lesson of this is to weed out the negativity in your life. See, the disciples asked Jesus the meaning of this parable. Go figure, the disciples didn't get what he was saying. There's a running joke that said somebody argued that God was a woman, and the joke went like this: because Jesus was always trying to explain himself to men, and they just couldn't understand. And I think that's about right. Sometimes, sure, he felt that way some days. But he said something here when he explained this in Matthew 13, 38, 39. The fields is this world, and the good seeds stand for the people of the kingdom. And the weeds are the people of the evil one and the enemy. Who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are the angels. A few verses later, in verse 43, he says this: the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Sadly, the bad suppresses the good. The righteous will be shining after the weeds are pulled out in this parable. This teaches us that the weeds, the people that sow that negativity into our life, the people of the evil one, were responsible for making God's kingdom look bad. And when the angels were going to take them out, they were described as, in Matthew 13:41 says, everything that causes sin and all who do evil. Ooh, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And their removal, when they were removed, what was left over? The righteous that were shining like the sun. In the same way that when the weeds are pulled out of the world, that righteousness is the natural result, We should pull the weeds and the negativity out of our lives so that we are able to shine. See, we may have many positive attitudes. Most of us have a relatively positive attitude. But most of us also have some negative ones too. And when your negative comes out, Kevin's pretty positive 99% of the time, but that 1%, that negative comes out, it erases all that other stuff. It dwarfs it. It diminishes it. It makes it not visible because you just see the negativity. Likewise, when these negative attributes are present, it diminishes the positive in our lives. See, weeds are going to grow. It happens. This world is broken, and it takes a conscious effort to keep the weeds out of our life. You've probably already figured this out. It takes no effort to grow weeds. There's an article that's called "What You Don't Manage, You Will Lose." I would love you to read it sometimes, but it talks about the weeds that are growing by default. The weeds that steal our time. The weeds that rob us of our health. The weeds that rob us of our money. And if we don't do anything to stop them, they take over our lives. See, Matthew teaches us that we should get rid of these weeds. We should get rid of anything in our life that causes us to sin. I mean, if you have one of these and it causes you to stumble, get a flip phone, my friend. If you know you have a problem with substance abuse, don't drink the substance. Don't take the substance. It's common sense. Put that stuff away from your life. It's expressed in Matthew 5:29 and 30 when it says this: if your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell. That's pretty point blank, my friends. You need to replace those weeds with good seeds. See, it's not just enough to weed out the negativity in your life. Because if you don't replace them with something, they will grow back. They need to be replaced with good seed. This means we have to tap into positive things. We have to tap into our word. We have to tap into prayer. We need to tap into a church family somewhere. And we need to sow good seeds into our life so that the weeds do not grow back. See, Psalms 1 says this. It says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but those who delight in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." That's pretty cool. So, in conclusion, I want to encourage you to begin to be ready for the harvest. If you read the back of the book and you read the front page of the New York Times, other than today, they think the world has already ended, they're starting to look too much alike to be coincidental. So we need to be ready for the harvest. The parable here, I only came up with 3 lessons today. I didn't go crazy. God will make a distinction in the future, my friends. Don't forget that. You will sow what you reap. And to weed out the negativity in your life, my friends. As a wise believer, as a person who's striving to be wise in his or her faith, Be ready and patiently await the harvest. Because God is going to make a clear distinction between who is righteous and unrighteous in that time. Sow good seeds that you'll reap accordingly. And weed this negativity that tends to invade our lives out and add positivity in its place. My friends, I love you. I think y'all are some awesome people. Thank you so much for watching. Andrew, Aaron, Eric, thank you so much, guys. You guys have a great day. I love you all. You're in my prayers. Take care, man.